Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Amanda.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Kendra.
And we are so excited today because we have a superstar guest, Dr. Sasha Shillcutt. She is a board certified cardiac anesthesiologist, tenured professor, and TEDx speaker. She's also, as if that's not enough, the CEO of Brave Enough, which is a community of tens of thousands of women where she coaches professional women, doctors, and business leaders. She's also the published author of 2 books. It just keeps coming, you all. The first one is Between Grit and Grace, and the book we're going to be discussing today is called Brave Boundaries. Learning how to set and enforce boundaries effectively is a critical skill for all of us. But for women, it's crucial and has some unique challenges. So thank you so much, Sasha, for joining us today.
Well, thank you. I am just honored to be here. And we were all laughing because we have so many similarities in our work life, I think. And I came in hot today and I could just be honest. And I felt like I've known all of you for years and we've literally only spent like an hour together. So I'm just excited to be here and chat.
We are excited you're here because we appreciate all these women coming in hot today. This is your safe space we're creating for you. So just sit back and enjoy. This is going to be fun. So Sasha, introduce yourself to our listeners as if you didn't have a huge following anyways, but just in case someone has been in residency training or med school or something and has not come out from underneath the rock lately.
So I am a cardiac anesthesiologist and professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. I practice clinical medicine and I am a leader in my department. And I founded a company called Brave Enough about 8 years ago after I really went through a period of burnout a decade ago. I have 4 children and I found myself, like I think many of us do, practicing this career that we worked so hard to get to and understand how to take care of patients. And we put in so many hours. And I remember thinking, is this really how it's going to be? Because this is not what I thought it was going to be. And what's wrong with me? The thought that I just kept having over and over was something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. I'm failing at work. I'm failing as a mom. And I don't know that I would have called it burnout then because I didn't know really what burnout was, but I definitely knew something was wrong. So in that year from about 2013 to 2014, I really rebuilt myself and I did it by putting up boundaries, saying no to a lot of things. And what I realized at the end of that year is I was a much healthier person, but I was really lonely. I was very isolated. And so I started a text group that became just a very simple text group with some other doctors that I said, hey, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to join my text group? It was kind of lame, but it was like a cry for help, a cry for friends. And that grew to a Facebook group, which then grew to a community. And now my company, Brave Enough, where I host conferences and retreats and do online coaching and courses for women physicians.
Yes. And even though if you're listening and you're like, wow, Sasha, like you burnt out and you were doing all of these things, but let's be clear. Sasha turned something that was not aligning with her values. And it's very clear that community and connection aligns with her values. And so really what it was her first step to set a boundary around that value and around what she really wanted instead of doing all the things that don't align with our values and that we really don't want to do. And then it spun out from there. So even if you're thinking, wow, you went from like, 0 to 60, burned out, now you're back 0 to 60. But all of these things, though, are conscious and very intentional things that she actually took a step to do because they actually feed her life or bring her joy and light her up. And so just really want to make that distinction because I know a lot of people even look at us, Amanda, Laura, and I, and are like, oh my gosh, you have, you work clinically and you have a podcast and you have a business and all these things. However, we are very, very consistent about going back to our mission and our vision and aligning these things that we actually want to do. So these things bring us joy. They give us life. They give us energy. And so we are able to go from there. So I know it sounds confusing, and we actually just got back from a retreat, and I was thinking that same thing as we were kind of talking about boundaries and all of these things. Like, I'm sure these people think, oh my gosh, how do you have 3 clinical jobs, a side hustle, a mom, and then you're going to your kids' games on the weekends, whatever. But just to be clear, this is how we do it. So kind of got off on a tangent there, but I honor you, Sasha, for really taking that next step and for being brave enough to write a book about boundaries, write a book about between grit and grace, and really help define like what we need to be doing. So with that, why did you write this book?
Kind of, you just really paraphrased so much. You get me, like because I know this is probably what you get too. You get these comments, right, from people who are like, why are you doing that? Isn't being a doctor enough? It's not enough for you. Why are you putting more work on your plate and expanding your plate and doing these things? But there's definitely probably things you're not doing that you don't align with. And you feel fine with that because this is filling that need. And so the reason I wrote the second book is Brave Boundaries. The reason I wrote this is because the first time I burned out in 2013, I burned out because exactly like you said, I was doing things that didn't align with my values. I had an NIH funded grant. I was the only person in my department doing clinical research with an NIH funded grant and very little mentorship. And it was extremely painful, but I was doing it and I was successful at it because I was taught this is what you should do. Like you should do this, right? But I did not love it. It was not my passion. And so then what happened was I got out of that burnout. I realigned my values. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot through community and actually peer coaching with other women and other women kind of helping me and mentoring me. And then I started my company. And then fast forward to 2019, the very beginning of 2020, I'm burned out again, which was quite frankly embarrassing because I'm a coach. I've written a book about burnout. But the difference was then I was burned out doing too much of the things that I love doing. So a very different burnout than the first real cycle of burnout. And so I went and sought actually advice from some people. And I was like, I'm burned out. I have this huge community. I don't know what to do with it. I've created something I can't manage. And there was a lot of thought distortions there that I had to really break down. I was trying to be everyone's hero, and then the pandemic hit and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't leave this group now. Like I got to take care of all these women doctors. I was making myself out to be something that was impossible and giving too much of myself. And then I went to a friend who's a psychiatrist. I was talking with her one day and having coffee and she said, I think you actually need to go to a therapist and just like unload all of this at a therapist. And I was like, I don't need therapy. I do not need therapy. And then I was like, she's like, the fact that you responded that, I'm like, I don't need that. I can't do that. And when I went in the pandemic to see a therapist for the first time, I hadn't been to therapy in like 10 years. I had some PTSD from a bad outcome and had done it like 10 years before, but that's what I had associated therapy with, right? I walked into the therapist's office and I literally looked like I thought I was like a celebrity. I had big old glasses on, like a scarf around my head. I didn't want anyone to know me, see me. I was so afraid someone was going to see me and be like, Sasha Shillcutt is going to therapy, And this tells you like the stigma around this, right? And it took one session and the therapist was like, you need boundaries. And I was like, boundaries? Boundaries are for people that are in toxic relationships. And she's like, yes, they are. And you are in a toxic relationship with yourself. And I was like mind blown. And so I did a deep dive into all the literature for boundaries because this is what we do when we're clinical scientists, right? We read, and this is where my brain goes. And I realized like, wow, I do need boundaries. I didn't realize like I had some areas of my life that really good boundaries around. And then I had some areas that I had no boundaries around. And I didn't realize how important it was that I honestly understood what a boundary was. And then I realized there's no books out there for like people like you and I, everyday working women who need boundaries and what they are and how to make them. And so that's what really gave me the passion to write the second book. And the second book is don't do too much of what you love or are good at, because both of those things are going to lead to burnout and unhappiness in your life. Even the sun burns if you get too much. We've seen that quote a million times and it's true. If too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And I think a lot of us come into medicine because we want to help people. And we want to give back and we want to take care of people. And that altruism, that value that we all hold bleeds into every area of our life, right? And it's so hard to set boundaries sometimes in other areas because that value that we hold can get overused and abused.
That's a really good point, because you would think that also these aren't bad values. Like, this isn't a bad thing to be wanting to help people. And so it's a struggle to think like, okay, my values are, I appreciate using my talents to help others. I feel, like that is my passion or what I'm called to do. But it's so true. It can sometimes be that double-edged sword. So with that, what are some of the unique challenges for women when they start setting these boundaries that you talk about?
Well, it's really important to note that we all are terrible at boundaries as women in general. And that's because society does, the world literally runs on women having no boundaries. Like, if we had to pay women for all the things women do to run the world, we'd go bankrupt. So our businesses run because we don't have boundaries and we take advantage of women. Our schools run because women do all this work with no pay. Our kids are educated because women do work without boundaries. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? So the world is used to women saying yes and not setting boundaries. So when you say, no, I'm not going to do that, what does everyone expect? People expect an explanation. Like, well, why? Like, and maybe the reason is because you don't want to, because you're not paid to, because it doesn't bring you joy, or because you have a conflict. People expect women to say why. They don't expect that from men. Men don't even answer the emails. They're like, I'm not doing that. Peace out, right? We don't answer emails and we're labeled like bad workers or not team players or lazy, right? So we are used to being yes women. That's how we got success to get to medical school or to get to the professional degree that we have or to get the job or the title we have. We are yes women. So saying no and setting a boundary, especially to people in power, feels so icky to us. It feels, and when in my coaching classes on this, it's like, I always say, you just feel the ick in your stomach, like when you have to say no to someone in power, or no, you're not going to do something, or no, I'm not going to that baby shower because I don't want to. Like you just feel like, right? You just get that feeling because you are not trained or socialized to say no. We're just not as women. And so it's so important to read like, that's why the book, or learning about this, that's why coaching, what you do, what all of you women do through your company, is so important, because it actually gives women a different thought model and permission to say no, at the same time realizing this doesn't feel good, but it doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, just even that last statement, like, louder for the people in the back, Sasha. You can say no and feel bad about it, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. That's a unique thing. So what are the 4 brave boundary questions to ask when setting a boundary? So if we need a framework, and most people do when they're starting out, yours is super helpful. So help to explain that to us.
Yeah. So the first question I always say is, what do you know to be true? Because, and what I mean by that is, just get to the facts and make sure that you're not creating a narrative around the story, around the boundary. So say Amanda says, hey, will you take my call next Friday? I have this thing I want to go to. And the minute Amanda asks me, I'm thinking of this conflict. I can't do it, but I get that icky feeling. And then I think my brain instantly starts making a narrative. Amanda's not going to like me. Amanda's going to think I'm lazy. Amanda's going to think I'm a bad team player. Amanda's going to blah, 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 right? We create this whole narrative. And so the first question is just to stop that narrative and get your brain on facts. What do I know to be true? Well, Amanda needs somebody to cover her call. She's asking me, probably one of 10 people. I can't do it, period. Like, get out all the drama. Like, don't add the drama. The second is like, what does the boundary look like? What is the boundary that I need to set? Well, the boundary is that I can't do it because I could do it, but I have to miss this thing I've already committed to, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Like, the boundaries just needs to be set. And then who do you have to communicate it to? I need to communicate it to Amanda, because see, what we do is we know the boundary, like, it's in our head. We know it's a no, but we put it off because it's too icky. We're like, oh, let me check my schedule. That's such a lie. We don't need to check our schedule. We know that we can't do it, right? So who do you need to communicate it to? And then what would the boundary look like? Make a date, set a time, or just immediately say no. Like, I love the immediate no. I'm a big believer in the immediate no. The minute you get an email that's a no, send it right back. It's a no. The minute somebody asks you, don't say you're going to think about it. Don't say you're going to check your calendar. If it's a no, say no, because a delayed no becomes a yes. And then you show up doing something you don't want to do. And then you're mad at Amanda. Why did she ask me? Doesn't she know that I'm tired? Right? But it's on you. So you have to do this little quick thought model. And it's so easy because it stops your brain from adding all this drama and narrative. And it literally gives you your power back in the moment.
Yes, I love that. That thought drama, man, it's powerful. It is definitely persuasive. And just like you said, if you know it's a no, better just to say that, because yes, you can talk. I have facts in my life that are evidence for me being like, sure, yes. And then all that does, you're right, is just breed resentment, because you're just like really upset, like, but because of all that thought drama, you talk yourself into doing it. And now you're resentful at a person that was just like, hey, I just need my call covered. I just need to switch shifts. Like, okay, didn't need that to ramp up to level 10. But anyways, such a good point. I love it.
Yeah. I love get your brain on facts and get rid of the drama. That's a quotable quote. I love that. So can you talk about your example in the book using the steps to establish a boundary with a yelling surgeon or consultant, for example?
Oh, yeah. This is a good one. I'm actually had to do this little thought model myself this morning, girls, as I was replaying.
People, you hear it here fresh. It's fresh off the press.
Yes. So luckily this will not be, played today for the public. So we don't know when I was saying this and who I worked with and what surgeon I will be referring to. Nobody can blame me. I'm just making this up in the world of Sasha. Okay. So let's say that someone speaks disrespectful to you, questions your clinical decision or your consultant care or what you're doing. I know this never happens to women doctors, but let's say it does. And you walk away feeling unsettled. Like we all walk away from interactions and then we replay the interactions. Like I did this morning. I've been replaying this interaction for the last 24 hours. And guess what? Every time I replay it, it pisses me off more. It makes me more angry. So now I'm getting all revved up about this person who probably has not even thought about this interaction since we had it. So, but it's very important. And it's important to set a boundary for how all boundaries do is they teach people how you want to be treated, right? And so we should never feel bad setting boundaries. We also have to realize two other things. You're going to get boundary backlash. You're going to get boundary backlash from people who have no boundaries. They're the biggest people to give you backlash. They're jealous of your boundaries. They're jealous you're acting empowered. They're angry. And so they're going to give you backlash. And you're also going to just have some people are clueless, especially narcissists. And they are just like, I don't know what that was about, So you're not going to win everyone over with your boundaries, and you're not going to win every conversation, but you do need to set the boundary for your own personal, like, respect and self-care. Okay. Like your own care of your own self. So you had a bad interaction, you need to say something. Number one, today is not my day to set the boundary. I have started texting this person 20 times. And then I did the mature thing of backspace delete because I'm pissed. Today is not the day for me to set the boundary because I have emotion. And as Laura said, I have drama, I have a narrative. So I need to work through that. But what is really making me angry, I thought about it. It's the lack of trust. It's the lack of trust of what I'm doing. And that's what made me the most angry. So was I frustrated about how he said what he said and yes, but that's drama. What really upsets me is the lack of trust. So setting a boundary with him is going to look like, and I'm going to do this when I'm not angry, is, hey, can I sidebar you for a minute? Can we chat? And I always start a boundary out like this. I care about you as a colleague, or I care. And if that's not true, because sometimes we don't, I'll say, I respect you as a colleague, because there's some people I don't really care about, but I do respect. And especially people you work with, you may not care about them and love them and like them and want to invite them to your house for barbecue, but you have to respect them because you work together on a team. So I always start it out like that because it tells the person that you're kind of coming with open hands. You're not coming at them because you don't respect them or you don't care about their opinion. And so I'm going to say, I care about your opinion and I really respect you as a physician. And the interaction left me uncomfortable. I did not feel that you were trusting me with how you were speaking to me. I felt like you were being very distrustful. And now I don't really want to work with you again because I feel like you don't trust me. And so I want you to know that I don't appreciate how you talk to me. Maybe you were going through something. I always open up a door because honestly, we always have everybody has bad behavior sometimes. If you don't think you do, you're a narcissist. So embrace it. You have bad behavior sometimes. And maybe this person I worked with was going through something really bad. Maybe he had a patient upstairs crashing that I don't know about, right? Maybe his kid's sick. I don't know. So I always say, like, I understand that's not how you normally speak to me. And you spoke to me in a way that I don't appreciate. And it left me feeling like you don't trust me. And I want to move past this because I appreciate you. So can we set a boundary here, or how can we work together? And when you do that, it makes you feel better. But you don't want to set a boundary with someone. Like, I work with a lot of people who I don't set boundaries with them because they're not receptive to it. And it's going to be a waste of time. I have to literally put boundaries around my own emotions around them. Like, this person is very narcissistic. I'm not going to get to a good place with this person. I'm not wasting my emotion on them. I'm going to put this little bad interaction in a box and throw it in the trash. So there's differences, right? Sometimes it's around your emotions. Sometimes it's around the person. And that's what's great about the model. It can be used for anything.
Oh gosh, I love that. I was like hypnotized by all that. That was awesome. So you've coached thousands of women. What are some of the most common areas in which we need to set boundaries, and even some we might not have even considered?
Well, I think the most surprising one for me when I started coaching women, it shouldn't be surprising, but I think it's one that women feel the most uncomfortable with, is boundaries at home with their kids and their loved ones or their family or their spouse, and the expectations they have of themselves. I think sometimes it's easy for us to blame our jobs for our burnout and neglect the fact that we may actually be over functioning at home because we have mom guilt, or because we feel like no one else can do it as good as us, or our mom did it for us, so we should do it for our kids, or whatever it is. We have a lot of distorted thoughts as women that result in really poor boundaries at home. So for example, I did this for years. I would work a 24-hour shift. I would come home and I would not have seen my kids for 36 hours from the night before when I put them to bed, right? And I would feel this enormous guilt. So on my way home, I was like, okay, I'm going to make pancakes with chocolate chips, and then we're going to go to the zoo and we're going to have a 10 out of 10 day. And then, by 1:00, I'm like screaming and crying and like, what am I thinking? And I had no boundaries around my kids. In fact, I was over functioning as a mom because I've had guilt, which just led to more burnout. And so, sometimes I'm coaching women, for example, and little kids will run in and they're like, oh, interrupt. I'm like, you need to have boundaries with your kids when you're on a 30-minute coaching call that you're paying me to help coach you. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. I've been gone. I'm like, no, that's your brain. Like you need to teach kids boundaries. Kids actually love moms, and they love boundaries, and anyone can learn them. And so a lot of times I think it's surprising to me how I coach women, and they always bring up the work stuff. But then when we get into the home stuff, they have very little boundaries around their own self-care and time with themselves, boundaries around their kids. They feel like they have to go to every single game, every single activity. Even if they've been working a 70, 80-hour work week, they can't take a Saturday morning for themselves. And we all really struggle with that. And so I think that you have to really evaluate what are my home boundaries actually?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's really good. I've just kind of come to that realization, like with my kid, I have teenagers, and with their chores, and I just don't want to be the harping mom, like, hey, it's your day to do the dishes or whatever. And so I find myself just doing it. Sometimes I realize, like, that's not helping. It's not helping anyone. It's not helping anyone. They have to figure that stuff out themselves too. And gosh, we just all want to be good moms. And it's just not as straightforward as we think it might be. So in your book, I loved how you explained that people pleasing can sometimes even be tied to your ego. Tell us about people pleasing.
Yeah. So I shared a little bit about a group that I led on Facebook for about 6 years. I led a huge group and it was a wonderful thing. And it was super fun and positive 95% of the time. But 5% of the time, it was taking hours of my day. And 5% of the people took about an hour of my day to kind of make sure that it was a good community and people were staying positive and nice. And I did not want to shut that group down, even though I knew that that's what would be best for my well-being, because I'm a people pleaser and because it was feeding my ego to be the helper, right? And when I finally, went to the therapist when I burned out and she told me that, she's like, this is feeding your ego. Like it's an ego boost. And I'm like, oh, it's not feeding my ego. I'm helping people. And she's like, listen to yourself. It's feeding your ego. That's why we overfunction. That's why we fall into the shero or the martyr role. Some of us really hold on to the martyr role, right? Like, oh, I have to do this and then I have to do that. And it's all rooted in people pleasing. And it's very closely tied to your ego. One comment I hear specifically women physicians say all the time is, if I don't do it, no one else will. And that can be education, an administrative duty, or even unloading the dishwasher. And that is tied to your ego. If you really believe that no one else can load and unload the dishwasher like as good as you can, you have an ego problem. You have a people-pleasing problem that's feeding your ego. If you believe no one can give the resident lectures as well as you and organize them, that's your ego talking. And businesses and institutions get a lot of free work out of women by using that, right? So it's just having the awareness that, do I want to do this thing because I really love it? Or do I want to do this thing because I want to be seen as somebody to like me because I'm doing this?
Yeah, I think a bunch of people listening probably just had a big paradigm shift because, this is what we just thought we're supposed to do. And it's not good for us and it's not good for the other people. So thank you for that perspective. So do you have any tips for when there is pushback, when we're trying to set boundaries?
Yeah, I think that I used to think, okay, it's my fault because I didn't explain this boundary well enough because now I have pushback, or I must not be communicating it enough or packaging it right. And there are very different personalities we all work with. There's different types of people, and you're going to get backlash. You're going to get a lot of backlash from men and women who don't set boundaries. So for example, if your boss or your supervisor or director or chair or whatever, if they answer emails every single day of the year, they're not going to get why you don't. And they're going to have that expectation of you. And when you say, I'm going on vacation, I'm offline for the next 10 days, they might get mad at you. And you may tell them 20 times before they get it, and they may never get it. It doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing by setting the boundary that you need. The other backlash that you get, I think, is from specifically people in power who are just used to you doing unpaid work, right? This is very common. We have a role, we have a job description, and we get paid to do this thing in our contract and in our job description. And then we have all the other stuff, right? And I always really encourage women to get rid of the other stuff unless they love it, unless they it brings them joy, right? And they don't care if they don't get paid, because you're not helping women as a collective. You're not helping pay inequities when you do that. And you're probably not doing what you're supposed to be doing, what you're paid to get done really, really well, because you're doing all this other unpaid work. And when you say no to that work, it triggers people in power. It makes them angry because you're setting a boundary that not very many women have learned to set. And when you get that backlash, instead of getting down on yourself, stand a little straighter, because you just leveled up. You just said, here, I'm here. For example, I'm going to give you an example. I was part of this leadership group for about a year ago for a year. And at every meeting, the leader of the meeting would look at me and go, are you writing this down? Are you writing this down? Now, I think everybody around the table would think, oh, he really likes her. He trusts her. But I don't take minutes at meetings. It's like a huge professional boundary and trigger for me. I'm not a secretary. I'm a physician like every other physician around there. And he did not ask everyone else to write it down. He asked me. And I'm like, no, I didn't write it down. And he kept going, oh, will you write that down? And I kept saying, no. I'm like, no. So we get to the next meeting, the second meeting, and he's like, Sasha, you took notes, right? You took minutes, right? And I said, no. And he said, you didn't take any minutes? And I literally knew that it was one of these defining moments. And I said, I don't take minutes at meetings. I don't take any minutes at meetings, and I will not be taking minutes at this meeting. And he was like, and so after the meeting, he kind of brought it up to me and he's like, what was that about? That was kind of out of left field. And I explained to him, this is the boundary. You didn't ask any of the men to take minutes. You asked me, and I refuse to be the minute taker. I'm not going to take your minutes for you. And he still brings it up to me. It still makes him frustrated. I don't care. Like I am not here to educate you. That is not my job, to educate you on gender inequity. I would love if he would say, oh my gosh, thank you for teaching me that. I realize I do that to women in meetings and I'm aware of it. And I thank you for teaching me that. That's not going to happen. So pat yourself on the back. I patted myself on the back because I was like, as sucky as it was and as uncomfortable as it was in that meeting, and as much as I'm sure people around the table who don't know me were like, she is something else. She thinks she's something else. I did what I needed to do for my own health and well-being, and I leveled up in that moment because I was like, I'm setting a boundary. I'm doing this for Sasha. And sometimes you just are going to have to get backlash. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Well, and it's not just for Sasha. Like every time we set a boundary, we're making the world better for other women. And
I love that.
Oh my gosh. Good job.
Yeah. But you said that we're going to have to do that, and we're going to have to get over, we've been doing this to keep people comfortable, including ourselves, for too long. So maybe you're doing it right, that it felt uncomfortable and you got hives. Who knows?
Yeah.
You have something called Brave Enough Conferences for High Achieving Women. Can you tell our listeners about that and other opportunities?
I would love to. I'm so excited that I think all of you are going to be coming to the conference this year. And I want to encourage any woman out there to come to the conference. It is for CME, so mostly geared towards women physicians, but we always have some other women there that are in healthcare or in executive roles or leadership, or just want to come and enjoy the weekend. It is this September 27th through 30th. I have it every year in Scottsdale. We have it at a top spa resort. It's at the base of Camelback. It's absolutely beautiful. And the conference is really for the whole woman. So day one, we really talk about where your power it lies, because we don't realize as we go through our year, how we just give away our power in little ways. And we kind of have to take our pulse, so to speak, and figure out where we've given away our power. And then day two, we go right into wellness and where your wellness is. What's your wellness pulse? How are you doing? And I want everyone to focus internally. I don't want you to be thinking about your patients, kids, your spouse, your dog at home, your aging parents. I want you to focus on yourself. So it's very, very specifically focused for you. And then day three is about designing your work life. So how does taking back my power and balancing that with my well-being, what would that look like? What would my work life look like? Because I realized that I do have more power than I realized. And it's just an amazing conference. I bring in phenomenal speakers. We're done every day at noon, but then you also have like free coaching if you want in the afternoon with physician, executive, and leadership coaches and life coaches. We have legal one-on-ones. You can get your headshots done. You can lay by the pool and in a cabana and have someone wait on you. You can go to the spa. And then we have networking and we have a really fun dinner and dance for everybody. It's all included in your registration costs on Saturday night. We call it Mom Prom. It's super fun. We always have themes and it's just fun, and we just dance and no one cares, and it's just super fun. So I would love for you all to come.
So how, if somebody, because everyone's going to want to go now, how do they register for that? What website, or how do they get in touch with you?
So my website is becomebraveenough.com, and I have a little Friday newsletter called The Scoop that I send out every Friday. I'm available for 15-minute chats if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to fit in at this conference. A lot of people feel like that. It's kind of surprising, but I think we're so isolated as women. We don't know where we fit in, and you're going to fit in. You'll know me. Set up a 15-minute call, or you can go to braveenoughconference.com, and all the information there is there, the agenda and all the goods.
Awesome. So we will have that in the show notes. So just scroll down and click, and then you're good to go. So Sasha, thanks so much for joining us. Are there any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to say thank you to all of you for what you do, and that this is your passion and your mission. And thank you for letting me come today and just chat with all of you. We could do this all day.
Thank you so much, Sasha. So refreshing to be in a group where there's authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance for all of it. Like, we're all just moms with a bunch of hot mess, but there's grace there. And if we can get it out and normalize some of these conversations, you know what? It's fun. And we lift each other up. We support each other, and there's nothing better. So thank you, Sasha, for all the work you're doing, even on the daily, just to represent anesthesiologists, women physicians, moms everywhere. Just thank you for paving the way. Thank you for being brave enough, not only for yourself, but for all of us at times. And so we honor you for your work, your books, everything you're doing, and the space you create for us to come together as a community. So thank you very much. And we recently launched a new version of our online course, Wellness 911. Go to www.thewholephysician.com to get more information. And until next time, you are whole, you are a gift to medicine, and the work you do matters.